Darkness presses from every direction, thick as concrete, swallowing the shape of the room until even memory feels unreliable. Somewhere inside this black, waterlogged chamber, a man is still alive. We do not see him yet. We hear him, ragged breath scraping through a failing emergency mask, each inhale shorter than the last, each exhale fogging nothing because there is nothing to fog. Metal groans nearby, a deep, wounded sound, like the rig itself is trying to scream but has forgotten how. Water laps at his chin. It is not dramatic. It is patient. It creeps upward, millimeter by millimeter, testing the border between air and ocean, as if rehearsing the final move. His gloved hands drift across floating debris, cables, shattered panels, pieces of a world that used to be ordered somewhere above him, far beyond reach. There is daylight, helicopters, voices, protocols. Down here there is only the mask, the water, and the sound of steel slowly surrendering. The alarms stopped minutes ago, or hours. Time has become another casualty. The chamber is tilting now just enough that the surface of the water is no longer level, turning the room into a sinking funnel. He coughs once inside the mask and immediately regrets it, because coughing wastes air. The ocean does not care about regret. It never has. 12 hours earlier, the rig wakes gently, as if floating on habit rather than steel. Dawn spreads a pale ribbon across the North Sea, and for a moment the platform looks peaceful, almost graceful, a small city balanced on legs that disappear into dark water. Men and women file into the briefing room, boots echoing in familiar rhythms, trading nods instead of words, because everyone knows the schedule by heart. Coffee mugs tremble on metal tables as turbines spin up below deck. Someone complains about the cold. Someone else jokes about the food. Screens flash with weather charts and maintenance targets, while the supervisor runs through safety procedures in a voice worn smooth by years of repetition. Everyone listens. Everyone also half stops listening because nothing ever happens here. That is the quiet agreement. Nobody admits aloud. Our protagonist checks his gear with automatic precision. Fingers moving without thought, tightening straps, testing seals, logging numbers he has logged hundreds of times before. This is not bravery. It is muscle memory. It is the confidence of routine, the comfort of knowing that yesterday looked exactly like today. Outside the windows, the sea glitters politely against steel legs, hiding its depth, persuading everyone that this floating city is safe, stable, and immune to sudden violence for now, until the routine finally shatters. The first warning is not an alarm, but a feeling, a faint vibration in the soles of boots, a tremor so ordinary it barely registers. Then gauges flicker. Pressure numbers hesitate, stutter, and slide into red. Somewhere far below the control room, a valve sticks for half a second too long, and invisible gas surges where it was never meant to go. A spark follows. It always does. The explosion is not a single event, but a brutal conversation between compartments. Fire roars through service shafts, stripping oxygen from hallways, turning breathable air into something that burns the lungs before the skin even feels heat. Men run because running is instinct, not strategy. The camera of the mind drops with them, past shattered lighting rigs, past doors that were designed to seal and do not. Bulkheads warp, pipes scream. Every system built to enforce order now betrays it, venting steam, spilling fuel, rewriting the architecture of the rig in real time. Then the fire meets the sea. At first, it is a hiss, almost gentle, as cold water punches through cracked steel and collides with heat. Steam blinds corridors. Electrical panels die with sharp white flashes. The ocean does not rush in heroically. It advances like a thief, filling stairwells, swallowing ladders, claiming rooms 1 square meter at a time. The point of no return arrives without ceremony, when a maintenance hatch bursts inward and the pressure equalizes. Water floods a lower deck in seconds, flipping tables, scattering tools, lifting people off their feet. Above, the control room keeps issuing commands to systems that no longer exist. Below, the rig finally breaks its own rules, and the sea accepts the invitation. The corridor becomes a river without warning. One moment, he is running with the others, boots slamming against steel. The next, he is weightless, slammed sideways as a wall of water detonates through a maintenance hatch. The hydraulic door behind him begins to slide shut, designed to save lives, and stops halfway, shuddering. Teeth locked on twisted debris. Silence replaces the roar. Not calm silence, but the thick underwater kind that smothers sound until even panic feels distant. He breaks the surface inside a pocket of trapped air, no larger than a small office, floating between ceiling and floor that have traded places. The compartment is unrecognizable, stripped of purpose. Filled with cables, shattered panels, fragments of equipment, drifting like the bones of a dead machine. Cold needles his skin through layers of protective fabric. His fingers move as if borrowed, clumsy, already forgetting how to close properly. The emergency mask hums weakly over his mouth, a tired insect sound counting down his margin for error. He looks for a way out and finds only walls that were built to breathe, not to drown. Water inches higher with each passing second, climbing his throat, shrinking the world to the diameter of his lungs. Somewhere inside the mask, a timer ticks. A soft mechanical reminder that technology can measure survival even when it no longer guarantees it. At first, he counts breaths, because counting feels like control. In for 4, out for 4. The numbers slide through his head like beads on a string, neat and reassuring. Then they begin to smear. The air tastes wrong, heavy and metallic, and his chest tightens as if someone has wrapped wire around his ribs. He hears a voice crackle over an intercom that no longer exists. It says his name, it gives instructions. He nods at nothing, grateful for the company. Until the voice dissolves into static and he realizes his mouth is forming replies no one will ever hear. Shapes move beyond the fogged mask, shadows pacing dead corridors, coworkers passing by as if the rig were still whole and he were merely late. Logic tries to surface. It tells him to stay still, to waste nothing, to wait for rescue. Panic laughs at logic and asks how long lungs can bargain with water. Every thought is a transaction now, traded against oxygen he cannot afford to spend. Memories intrude without invitation. The weight of a coffee mug this morning, the vibration of turbines underfoot, the casual confidence of a day that promised to be ordinary. The room seems to pulse, contracting with each shallow breath, and for a terrifying moment, he forgets which way is up. His body wants to thrash, to claw, to make noise. Anything to prove it is still here. He presses his forehead against cold steel and whispers instructions to himself, hoping the sound might anchor what remains of his mind. The mask falters with a brittle click that is quieter than it should be, a sound too small to carry such consequences. The airflow stutters, resumes, then dies again, leaving only his own rasping breath echoing inside plastic. He does not scream. There is no air to waste on ceremony. Silence expands around him, thick and final. He presses the regulator, taps the housing, performs tiny rituals learned in training, but his fingers already know the truth. Waiting has transformed from strategy into surrender. He looks at the half-sealed door, the drowned corridor beyond it, the black maze of shafts and ladders that lead somewhere above. He has no map, no visibility, no promise that any of it still connects to the surface. He has only the sensation of his lungs rebelling, the deep animal insistence that remaining here is not an option. The choice arrives without drama. Stay and suffocate, or move and possibly die faster. Heroism never enters the calculation. This is not courage, it is the body vetoing extinction. He takes one last clean breath from the dying mask, pulls it free, and lets the water claim his face. Committing to a direction he cannot see, and a future that may not exist. Shock hits first, a violent cold that claws at his skin and tries to steal rhythm from his heart. He forces it back. There is no room left for fear. Fear burns oxygen he no longer has. He becomes instruction instead of emotion, a checklist unfolding in the dark. One hand on the wall at all times. Fingers search for edges, bolts, seams in the metal that tell him where he is. He moves slowly, not because he is calm, but because speed creates mistakes, and mistakes turn corridors into coffins. He counts the seconds in his head, not to measure distance, but to prevent the panic surge that demands air too quickly. A ladder appears beneath his palm. He angles his body upward, letting buoyancy do the work his muscles cannot afford. Every movement is trimmed to necessity. No flailing, no wasted arcs. He remembers a training drill he once laughed through in a shallow pool, instructors preaching restraint to people who felt immortal. Now the lesson writes itself into his bones. The water is ink. There is no visibility, only pressure changes that whisper whether a shaft rises or dead ends. When he meets resistance, he backs away, instead of forcing through, conserving strength like currency. He is not escaping, he is negotiating, room by room, breath by breath, moving the way water moves, yielding around obstacles until something finally opens or he runs out of body. His head breaks the surface inside a narrow capsule he does not recognize at first. A bulb of metal lodged at an angle, half filled with water, half with air that might be poison. He does not inhale right away. He floats there, lips parted, listening to the thin whistle of his own lungs, deciding whether to trust this unfamiliar atmosphere. When he finally draws breath, it is cautious, shallow, as if he might offend the space by using it. The pod rocks gently, a cradle formed by wreckage and tide. And he waits for something to fail, for the ceiling to collapse, or the water line to climb again. Nothing happens. Waiting has become instinct, not relief. Time stretches. He drifts in and out of consciousness, suspended between drowning and living, until distant vibrations reach the capsule, the muted thump of propellers slicing the sea. A beam of light slides across the pod's window and vanishes, then returns, uncertain like a thought reconsidered. The divers were not looking for him specifically. They were mapping debris, counting losses, assembling a picture of destruction too large to comprehend. His signal, weak and erratic, barely registers against the background noise of the wreck. When the hatch finally opens, there is no applause, only surprise, as if he has interrupted a story that was already finished. They call it recovery, but nothing about it feels like returning. On land, he flinches at elevators, at closing doors, at the hiss of air brakes on passing buses. Rooms seem too large, ceilings impossibly high, as if gravity has loosened its grip and the world might tilt without warning. At night, he dreams of corridors folding in on themselves, of hands brushing metal that is no longer there. In supermarkets, he catches himself counting breaths between aisles, measuring invisible distances the way he once did underwater. The sound of running taps sends a ripple through his chest that no doctor can see on a scan. Friends talk, voices warm and concerned, but their words arrive as if filtered through layers of glass. His body heals quickly enough. Bruises fade, strength returns, yet part of him never truly leaves the rig. It stays behind those steel walls in that shrinking pocket of air, listening for alarms that will never sound again, carrying the ocean quietly into every ordinary room he enters, far below the shipping lanes and weather maps. The remains of the rig lie scattered across the seabed, a broken city settling into silence. Steel legs that once carried people to work now carry nothing at all, only rust and the slow arithmetic of pressure. The ocean has absorbed the story without comment, as it absorbs everything else. We build machines tall enough to challenge storms, and deep enough to invade spaces our bodies were never meant to occupy. Inside them, we pretend mastery, trusting protocols, diagrams, and the confidence of routine. But survival, when it comes, rarely favors the strongest or the fastest. It favors those who remember how to be small, how to move carefully, how to waste nothing. The man who surfaced in darkness did not defeat the sea. He negotiated with it, moment by moment, using fragments of training and the stubborn refusal of a body to end quietly. That is the uncomfortable truth beneath every dramatic headline. The film ends where it began, in black water and collapsed rooms. But now the darkness carries weight. It is no longer empty. It holds breath, memory, and the knowledge that somewhere below, the ocean keeps what we leave behind and waits patiently for the next mistake.